So as I said at the beginning, please don't misinterpret me. I'm not trying to tear Jesus down. But remember that Jesus was totally human, like we are. We have a tendency to stress his divinity, but don't forget his humanity. So I'm going to propose this morning for your consideration, and again, you don't have to accept this, that he was human like we are, and his temptations are the same as the temptations we go through. So first of all, remember in the scriptures, whenever you hear the word 40, that's a symbolic number. It's not to be taken literally. So 40 days in a desert, we don't calculate that, like exactly 40 days. It was a long time. That's what that means. Just like the Jews in the Exodus in the Sinai desert. They were in the desert 40 years. It's not to be taken literally. It's a long time. And in my reading of the Bible, I believe that the writers of the Bible have taken the stories and what I call they jazzed them up a little bit to make them more interesting. So in this story, we have the devil tempting Jesus. And I don't know what's going through your mind, but our notion of the devil many times is a little green monster hiding under the bush. Coming to me, you little sherry. No, Jesus was tempted by the same temptations that we go through. So the three temptations, I'm sure you all know this already, represent areas of temptation. The first, obviously bread, is the temptation for material things. Not just bread, but think about all the material things that we're tempted to give into. Whether it is something physical, shopping and gifts and all the things we can buy, material things, or our careers, or our achievements, all of that's symbolized in that area of the temptation about the bread. The second temptation is the temptation of worldly power and glory. Don't we all want to be well thought of? Don't we wonder once in a while, what will the neighbors think? We all want to be bigger and better than we really are, more famous, more popular, whatever. That's the second temptation. And the third temptation is to depend more on God than ourselves. Throw yourself down from the temple. You remember that one? Because some people believe that God sets the day of our death, and so they can do anything they want because God will protect them. They'll say, well, if today isn't the day I'm supposed to die, then I can throw myself down from the Hone Bridge and I won't die. Depending too much on God and not enough on our own self and sense. That's the third temptation. And so obviously on our stones today, we have the thing of temptation. Oh, this stone is so heavy. So this is what we're dealing with today, our temptations. So think of any temptation that you might be going through, or you have gone through, or you will go through. So how to struggle with our temptations? First of all, temptations are never to do something bad. Temptations are never to give in to evil. Whenever we're tempted, it's a temptation for something that we think is good for us. And I bet we've all been tempted by what we thought was good, but then over time it ended sour. It turned out not so good. So temptations are never for something evil. It's always for something that we think was good for us. And temptations are never weaknesses. They're always temptations for strength. And to keep things in balance, that's the greatest of all temptations. Money is not bad, but if you're obsessed by it, it becomes something leading you away from God. Alcohol isn't bad, but excess is. Beauty. If you're beautiful or handsome, that's not bad. But when you use it for yourself, it becomes leading you away from God. Power is not bad. We need people in the world that are powerful, but only for good. If it gets into for their own benefit, it becomes a temptation. Credit cards aren't bad, but they can become leading us away from God. Technology isn't bad, but again, some people are obsessed by their phones. Food isn't bad, but again, it's the excess that leads us away from God, more into ourselves. So think about whatever temptations. I'm sure I didn't mention them all. Now, how to fight temptations. That's where I think we get mixed up. Many people think that fighting temptations, we have to do it directly. Now, everything starts in our minds. I don't believe we do anything that we first didn't think about. So all of our temptations start in our minds. As a temptation comes into your mind, don't try to fight it directly. That's where I think spiritually we have been misinformed. Maybe you've done it. You have a temptation and you want to get rid of it. So a lot of people say, I'm not going to think about that. I'm not going to think about that. I'm not going to think. Well, what are you doing? You're thinking about it. And it gives more power. So if you have a temptation, don't fight it directly. Think of something better that you really enjoy. And then by thinking of something else, that temptation will fade. Think of something you like better, something more enjoyable, and that one will fade. It all begins in our mind. And why do we do that? Because all of us here, I'm assuming, want to become better disciples of Jesus. That's our goal. That we don't stagnate, that we continue to grow. We always talk about that in our staff meetings. We don't want to stagnate. How can we grow in our ministry and in our service of Jesus? Now, most of us think that we have to do all the work. I wrote about this. I talked about this on Ash Wednesday, and I know I'm repeating myself. And I also wrote it in my monthly letter to you if you read your mail at all. Because most of us think that I have to do all I can to get closer to Jesus. This is what I wrote. Many of us still do penance and practice our faith so we can merit or earn God's favor. We obey the commandments. We say our prayers. We do Lenten penances. We strive to live a good life so God will love us. That's totally incorrect. God always loves us. We are obedient to God's will. We receive the sacraments. We do penance. We try to be good, not to get God closer to us, but to give ourselves more fully to allow Him to come to us. It's not what we do to get closer to Jesus, is what we can open up our minds and hearts to lay aside all the things that block His path into our lives. And I also read this paragraph from this book, Things Worth Dying For, that I worked on in my retreat. Here it is. It's crucial to see that the Christian life is not so much me bringing Jesus into my life by trying in some way to appropriate His behavior and mentality, but Jesus opening to me the doors to His life, granting me a share in the acts and the intents of His heart. It's not I who make room for Him. It's rather He who invites me to open up my life so that He can come to me. That's what this is about. Open up your lives, your hearts, your minds, your temptations to let Jesus come closer to you. That's what Lent is about. That's what Lenten penances are about. So once again, we invite you to come forward now and pick up your stones from the various towers. And if one tower is out of stones, go to another one. We have lots of them. And as we're doing it, think about what temptations you struggle with and how you can turn away from them, not to get closer to Jesus, but to let Jesus get closer to you. Please, if you would.